Hey, everybody, welcome to Battle Language. I'm Jack Rita. In this episode, we're going to dive back into the long wish list that was posted on Board Game Geek on September 6th, it looks like, posted by Ben Lynch from Down Under. And Ben is my special guest. I thought it would be fun to bring him on to Battle Language and pick his brain directly to see what motivated him to make this ridiculously, though fabulously long list of potential goodies and extras and content that may be part of what is the Kwisatz Haderach edition of Dune that Gale Force 9 has been threatening to launch. It's going to be launching sometime next year, probably Q2, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And it's been talked up as a deluxe edition of Dune. It's also talked up having a new content, new expansions worth of material, new ways to play Dune. But we don't really know much more beyond that, and it hasn't been decided. But that doesn't stop us in the community from speculating and wishing for what it is. So I thought let's bring Ben in and get his insights and keep that discussion active. I think it's worth making sure that anybody who has a stake in it, whether you already own Dune, going all the way back to the 79 edition or the 2019 edition, or are looking for a new edition, what you hope to get out of it to just get some consensus. So Ben, welcome, and thanks for joining us here on Battle Language.
No, it's okay. I'm glad to be here.
So yeah, let me start off with the question of what drove you. I think part of it may be, I mean, if you know anything about any of the other stuff that I've done, Ben is clearly a Dune fan and also has an entrepreneurial spirit. As we look at his Etsy page, where he's got some cool stuff on here. This battle wheel holder, so it holds your whole battle plan. The stackable inserts for your tokens are also very cool. So a lot of interesting stuff on there. But yeah, Ben, what was the driving force for you to spend the time? And let's just give everybody a quick sneak peek at just the extent of the material that you have compiled on this Board Game Geek post. It goes on and on and on and on. What drove you to do this, Ben? Explain yourself.
Ah, if it's not obvious already, maybe it's a bit of obsession, but more of it was I think the community around this game is so cool, and it's great that it's such an old game. Hearing from people who played it back in the original, people who are just getting into it now, like me, and with the new edition coming up, I thought it was a good idea to have a post somewhere that compiled most of the ideas from the community. So I tried to get as many different perspectives as I could. I went on like Facebook group. I tried to read some of the forums on BGG and a bunch of other random spots on the internet that had anything to do with the board game, and watch some of Jack's videos as well to try and just compile everything into one post with all different perspectives and ideas so that the Gale Force 9 or anyone else in the community could contribute, talk about it. And that's why it is so long and extensive. I tried to give everyone a voice, different versions, like as an example, with the different approaches to how we're going to do the tokens for the new version, or changes to the rules, or different community homebrew rules. Just a big celebration of the game itself and the reputation it has, and the community itself. That's what I wanted the post to be. And since the Kwisatz Haderach edition's coming out, like I said, it'd be good for the publisher to go, okay, this is the one spot that we can read and the community is talking. And
Yeah.
I intentionally made the post and kind of just left it there, and was planning to come back and do comments on it, but I guess we're doing that now in a video format.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think you definitely should do both, because who knows how many people are going to sit through this video
Yeah,
Hopefully a
that's
lot
true.
of them, hopefully, people who are real stakeholders or have strong opinions one way or the other will get those out. And the for us and for the publisher in particular, they're going to have to sort through and get a true sense of what is consensus and what is a very loud minority insisting on
Yeah.
something that maybe the majority is not as crazy about. And the thing is with this edition is that you've got really a couple of potential things going on, and I like to divide it primarily in two camps. One is deluxe components, which could be applicable just for your existing game. So the idea of the token inserts, maybe something that holds your battle plan, a storm marker. These are all things that could just be applied to your current edition. It's just deluxe fancy components, the shield holders, what have you there. But the other part of this discussion that has definitely bubbled up and has almost as much traction and interest is what I consider elements that would technically be considered a second edition or a game or a new edition of the game. And some people think, oh, it's the Kwisatz Haderach edition, so they're automatically assuming it's a new edition. So does that going to mean new artwork? Is it going to be mean that there are any changes to the rules or any changes to the factions? Will it mean any new factions? And that's something that interests me as well. There's a lot of, I think, discussion and disagreement about certain things that certainly happened between the 79 edition and the 2019 edition. There were definitely changes there, and there were, there's not necessarily consensus. There's some people that love what has different, or some people that don't. And there's also people who still don't really get into Dune because of certain rules. And the biggest is, the advanced combat rules can be very difficult for new players to grasp and get their heads around. And there's people that hate the idea that there's two different rule sets and like which one's the official rule set. And the original designers will say basic is the rule set and everything else is just extra. But a more majority of people that I play Dune with prefer the advanced version of Dune. But the sheer number of people who have been posting on Board Game Geek and on news groups and on Facebook and elsewhere about their personal solution for being able to play advanced without advanced combat should not be ignored. That there's a lot of people out there that want to have the full advanced experience, but they do not like that spice styling. They're trying everything they can think of to come up with something different, and so I think it's worth looking at. And it's something that I hope that Gale Force 9 will consider. If it's going to be a brand new edition, whether it is just as part of the Game Found or what they're going to have offering moving forward, I think it should be the best possible version of it. We have an FAQ that's 20 pages long. Surely we can find ways to eliminate some or all of that FAQ by clarifying the rule book and text on cards and text on sheets in order to make it for the best experience. So Ben, let's dive in and look at a few sections of this, and let me get a sense from you what are the things that are the highest on your list of priorities. What is it that you are looking forward to in a Kwisatz Haderach edition? What do you hope to see? And your thoughts about those two main umbrellas, whether it's just fancy components that bling up your game, or if it is an improved rule set. And because you do cover both of those areas in your master list on here. So I'm curious where you fall in on some of these discussions.
I think that both perspectives are valid, but the number one things that I think should definitely be in whatever route uh, Gale Force 9 chooses to go down is, like you said, the FAQ shouldn't be 20 pages long. And, I think a lot of rules should be clarified. Having said that, given how Dune works, is like, whenever I explain it to people, I always say, you know, these are the rules, except everything I say, there's an exception to it. And I think most people are fine with that. But like you were saying, and I see those posts as well, when you get to explaining advanced combat, that's when people start going, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And every time I've tried to show it to new people. That's the hardest part. So whether it's, I've heard people say, double the values or changing how advance works altogether. I think I try to have all those different perspectives because, as I've been hearing from you in some of your videos, Gale Force 9 isn't very clear on which route we're going on, so I thought it was best to cover both bases. I personally think that um, maybe it should be some form of like a balance patch or like a newer version with updates from things that we've learned in the years that the game has been out and all the homebrewing and um, the years that it's been, we've figured out, oh, we've got to make the Fremen a bit more of a whole faction rather than it being random bits and bobs of a faction, or maybe try and balance some other abilities and fix up some clarifications and stuff like that. But I think that that should be the focus. That would be my um, goal for the Kwisatz Haderach edition, like a newer version. But I think that we should be incorporating or giving the ability to players to go, you know what, we played this way when it first came out, and giving them the ability to go back to that old rule set, what they played with some deluxe components, if that makes sense. So it's an incorporation of updating the rules, but still celebrating the history of the game and allowing players to play it how they want, because I think they're going to do it anyway. So you might as well give them the option to. I think it's like a celebration of the game itself and just how thematic it is and how much this game means to a lot of people. And the history of it, like it's got a tournament scene, or was one of the first games with a tournament scene, wasn't it? From
Yeah.
what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing with Dune is that it's not a terribly complicated game to learn and play, but it is a game with a lot of nuances. There's a lot of little
Yeah.
tiny rules, and somebody new to the game is gonna they're not going to know those rules. They're going to forget them easily. They're not going to be taught them because it's just like, oh yeah, every once in a while this happens, and I didn't bother to mention it. And the example I always love to give is, not a it's not often when somebody's explaining the rules that they go through the entire treachery deck and show you all the cards and the effects. So you don't know that it's possible to blow up the shield walls with atomics until it
Yeah.
happens, and you can't plan for it. And I remember, and this is an experience I imagine a number of players have had, where I was all in on Carthag and Arakeen, and the storm was right there, and somebody played atomics and somebody played weather control, and it was a 1-2 punch of destroying all of my forces. And I just like, I didn't even know that this was a thing. Nobody warned me. And so you have a number. There's, that's not the only thing, but there's a number of things. Just, the way that people try to use truth trance is its own, black hole of God knows what can happen. And then
Yeah.
Karama is trying to do so many things, and not everything even fits on that card. And there's still different ways that people play it. I remember sitting in a game of Dune with somebody using their Karama to bid infinity for a card, and somebody playing a Karama saying, I'm bidding infinity +1, and me thinking, there's no way that this is real. and
Yeah.
and so even things like that I kind of feel like, these two things by themselves, Truth Trance and Karama, account for 10 pages in an FAQ. And that's just got to go away. There's got to be ways to simplify a lot of the action in the game without sacrificing the thematics, without sacrificing all the things that make Dune cool. And there will be people I know who will chime in and say, I think this is what makes Dune cool, but I don't. I think you're a loud minority. I don't think that you are the consensus. I think that there are things that the designers intended with Truth Trance and with Karama and with a few of these other things that have been blown out of proportion. But on the other
Yeah.
side of it, bribery, that was something that they never intended, they never planned for, and they still don't really use. But slowly and surely, they're starting to understand that for many, many, many players, bribery and the deal making aspect of the game, what makes a social game extra social and good, is critical to why Dune has been successful and needs to be, integrated from the beginning, and examples given in a rule book to show how can you really capitalize on this, and how can you use your unique faction advantages to solicit bribes or to expand on those capabilities. And so these are also things that I think should be taken into account with a new edition. Everyone wants an updated rule book, but what does that mean? This is what I think it means. Among other
Yeah,
things,
I
is
agree.
clarifying it, examples, moving some of the material from an FAQ into the rule book and onto the components themselves to help clarify that. But some fundamental changes. The idea that truth trance was never intended to be a way to predict the future and force people into decisions. It's an interrogation tactic. It's you're speaking before the emperor. Are you telling the emperor the truth? And we know whether or not you are. That is its historical application. And it wasn't
And
a
using truth
yeah,
trance for
exactly.
just inside of the game as well, not
Nobody.
outside, not outside,
Yes,
outside of the game
exactly. Yeah.
questions.
Are you seeing my wife? No, you
Yeah,
don't want to have and you can never imagine like, all right, we've brought, this duke before the emperor, and the emperor's first question is, "Will you answer yes to my next question?" I mean, that's absurd. There's no,
yeah.
and like the mother, Reverend Mother says yes, he will, and so now we can ask whatever we want and get him to say yes. That's
Will he
not
answer
Dune.
yes to the
Yeah.
next question?
Yeah, and like
Yeah,
5 years from now, will your forces invade Carthage, no matter what else is going on in the board state? No, that's not its
yeah.
intention, and so those things need to be clarified, and that way players know exactly how they're supposed to implement it. So yeah, that's a big part, which I think is true, irrespective of whether it's truly a new edition or if it is mostly an exercise in upgrading components. But it's an opportunity. You're creating a new set of the game, and I think it's a missed opportunity to not address these things and say, yeah, we want this to be out of the box the best Dune experience that anybody can have. And for me, as part of the design team who's working closely with the publisher, I have to be honest that my desires are that more and more people are going to get this, and I'm including people who already have Dune. I want to give them a reason to want to buy another copy of Dune, and not just because it's got some shiny new art or that we've cleared up Truth Trance. I want it to be ultimately, at the end of the day, the best edition. I call it the ultimate edition of Dune, and but I want to give it the flexibility to still let players make of it what they want, but do it in a better way than we've got advanced rules and basic rules. So pick your thing, or here are the rules and here are optional rules, which is how Avalon Hill did it. There's a third path that I think exists, which I'm not going to get into in this video, but I think it's there. And if Gale Force 9 wants to take that path, then we'll let the community know if we need people to playtest anything. We are playtesting some stuff in anticipation of it, so let us know. But I think as we scroll along, I think you
One
talk about.
thing
Yeah, go ahead, Ben. Go.
I will just jump in and say one thing on that. I really like the idea of the publishers giving the community the opportunity and the ability to make their own homebrew things, because I think this is one of the most homebrewed games apart from like Cosmic Encounter and a couple other games. So having in the box the ability to have your own little rules and your own way of making the game your own is something that I think is really cool. And I think it's like a celebration of the community surrounding this game. And one other thing about, opening the box and making it a little bit less intimidating for newer players, especially, is I think that in the rule book, there should be some incorporation of the idea that you have of the escalating treachery, because you said you said about the treachery deck, like there's 50 cards in there. Like when I was explaining it to some of my friends in some of the groups that I've started playing Dune, do you want to sit there and need to explain every single card, or do we want to have the deck, you know, unfold itself and go, oh, well, here's this new card, like how it works in your escalating treachery way of dealing the cards out during bidding and explaining that, okay, now you understand how projectile weapons and poison weapons work and the defenses. Here's the atomics card and here's the truth trance card. And now I'm giving you more ideas as you are getting slowly more into the game, and you're not just given an information overload and trying to remember what every card does along with what your faction does and what the other faction does, and all other parts of the game that you have to think about, so you just lose it. I think a lot of players will get turned off by that, but if there's some easier way of, or reviewing how it's introduced to newer players, something like that, that just eases you into the experience. So you get maybe even like a 3-turn introductory game in the rule book so people get used to it, and then just reset and go from there. Just a basic way of introducing newer players, because there will be people who, like you said, will already have the game and will want to get it, or might want to be convinced to get it, and this isn't really for them. But for newer players who are interested and have heard about Dune, I think something like that would be really, really good and make it very.
Yeah, it's definitely something worth looking at. I know that there's going to be people on encamped on both sides of that, and even some trying to explain all the cards at the beginning of the game. You don't have context for a lot of those effects, so you don't necessarily know why it's useful or when you would use it. But maybe after you've played 2 turns, you might think, oh, okay, I can see why having a cheap hero, who has no battle value actually would be a good thing, or here's a great
Yeah,
circumstance where I'm glad to use it, but most of the time it just seems like it's taking up space, and there's a lot of different ways. It's the sort of thing, and I know you've got this little idea of a QR code. I frankly I would love if they could do that, if they had that sort of thing where they could maybe have a few different short videos that cover this, that, or the other that you could watch. It does feel like we're getting more into violating the Great Convention, the more technology that we
yeah, yeah,
incorporated. But then you could also have
yeah.
an analog version where, let's say that as part of the game found, they put out something that is like an Atreides tracker sheet, and you had a pad of those, but it's not just a list of all the cards, but maybe there's a one-liner on what that card does, and so now it becomes like a reference sheet that anybody can really use if they need to. I don't know how practical it would be to go back to the pad that they had in the Avalon Hill edition, which was, they had no text on the treachery cards, so you had to look at the pad to see what all the cards did. But
Mm,
at least you had an explanation, and everyone had the same one, so you had different reasons to look at the pad. And it wasn't just, oh, he's reading the pad, so he's probably trying to figure out what that Karama does.
yeah,
It's not so obvious, but it's worth looking at, and I'd be curious to see what sorts of things that Gale Force 9 might think would be fun, either as like an add-on or as something else to consider, and how easy it would be, how impractical it would be to add it into the game. But yeah, that's the thing, is that this is a game with a lot of depth and a lot of nuance, and you're going to get more out of it the quicker that you can grasp that sort of thing. And if they really lean into the fact that this is an epic game, this is not, hey, we're going to play this in an hour. Very unlikely that that's going to be true. You lean into the fact that, yeah, this is an epic game, and by epic we mean you're probably going to be playing it for 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 hours. It's not impossible that it would go longer, just depending on how new everybody is and how well things are going and their understanding. And if it's going to go 10 turns, it could last a while. And if like you take a dinner break in the middle, who knows? Yeah, it could be an all day long affair. So people should be aware that that is the possibility. I think that the information on the side of the box so far is not the most accurate. It says 2 to 6 players, and that's already not really true. And then it's
yeah.
like 2 hours
Probably more.
or something like that. I'm like, yeah, it's technically true, but not likely. I think on average, a game of Dune is going to be about 3 hours. So could go shorter, probably will go
I
longer.
remember, I remember the Shut Up and Sit Down review, and they were saying about, you might put the whole day aside and you finish just before you break for lunch. And it's like, what do you do now? because you can't really start another game because you don't know how long it's going to be. And I've been in that situation with my group of friends who I regularly play games with. You know, you have a really short game because you know someone snuck into the extra stronghold or someone lost and
Yeah,
meant that that was the
exactly.
game. And then,
Whoops.
oh, well, what do we do now? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's only 2 o'clock.
You guys all
So
left it up to me to stop this win, and I've got, a cheap hero and two worthless cards. I've got no chance of
yeah,
beating
what
them.
am I
And
supposed
so,
to do?
because you are all going after
Yeah,
Spice and saying, "Oh, someone else will beat him." So yeah, that does
yeah,
that does happen from time to time as well. And maybe if Dune had a legacy version, you could be like, "All right, well that's chapter one down, and we're going to maybe we do start up another game, and we're using the current game state to decide what's going on." Or whatever.
would
But
be cool.
I don't. That's not a solution for Kwisatz Haderach. It would take us a year to develop that. So, but yeah, to think ahead, maybe a future thing. Yeah. So you got talking about one rule set. I like the idea of a single rule set, and you do mention specifically how Shut Up and Sit Down, that was their biggest nit for that. Um, and I've got a lot of thoughts on that. I could do a whole video just talking about the one rule set, but I should probably wait until I know
Yeah,
what's in the Kwisatz Haderach edition, and I know what Gale Force 9 wants me to just not talk about. So we're going to skip
we're all
over
eagerly
that.
awaiting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
I that is the side I fall on. I would like one rule set,
yeah.
but like I said, I wanted it to be of the whole community, and I know that some people like the more traditional older version, not even with the basic and advanced, they just like the basic. But I also wanted to be on the more, I guess, liberal side where we reform it and make it one rule set,
Yeah.
combine it all. Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard because it's the sort of thing where, there's a lot of people that do homebrew elements of the game. And you do have a community of players that were more familiar with the Avalon Hill edition. And there are some changes between that and the Gale Force 9 edition. And like when I play with one group, we only ever play basic. But I would say 80% of my gameplay is advanced, and it's advanced the way it's supposed to be played without a lot of tweaks to things. It's just I'm lucky to be with enough people who understand spice styling that they're able to do it. But some of them do it under duress. They're like, "I'll play it this way, but I hate you for making me do
Yeah.
it." So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of that. Now, one of the big things that I feel like no matter what they do in this edition, whether it is a new edition or it's just the old edition made shiny in chrome, is they still should address a lot of clarification issues. And Bene Gesserit are notorious. They're a very long segment of the FAQ, and it has to do with the advisors. And that's largely driven by the fact that this was not how it was implemented in the Avalon Hill days. They didn't have advisor sides to the tokens. They just had this state of coexistence with no physical way to designate that. And while this is a great idea, it did open up a lot of other questions about how does this work, how does that work, and even the faction sheet itself is not really clear. Hence, all of the FAQ entries, and that's also true for a few other areas on there. And we've talked about in some of these other videos that you link to possible ways to fix that up. So there are ideas out there. And you in the next section here, you're talking about iconography, and I think that is an area worth looking at. They have some amount of iconography. Could it be better? In the past, working with Gale Force 9, they haven't been a company that's like, "Ooh, yeah, let's go hog wild with icons that explain things." It might help with all of the different language editions that people want, but they're like, "Well, we have not
Mhm.
done a language translation for this expansion or that. Would this sort of thing help out with those players who maybe struggle with all the text?" I mean, there's a lot of text, and there's going to be no getting away around that. You can't replace that. This
I
player
think
aid
another thing
here,
is
yeah,
I think another thing is just to jump in is fairness as well, because you were saying about the he's looking at the reference sheet, he must be looking up what the Karama is.
yeah,
I forget what all the abilities are. If I want to play all the factions, you do a lucky dip and go, oh, I'm playing Geek as this game. Oh, what does the Richess to do again? Oh, that's right. I can buy my card for 3 spice or whatever it is. I think it's also good because all the players don't have to ask questions or look at references is you can go and look at the thing and go, oh, that's right, in your head, and make the strategies that way and not give anything away. Because that's one thing I try to do in any game I play. I really don't like um, having the situation where someone has to ask a question which gives away the game.
Yeah.
Because I like the fact that I'm versing my friends tactically and seeing their strategy play out, and oh, that was such a smart move. And when they have to give it up, it's like, ah, oh, damn it. And you can start to, in your head, prepare for the eventualities of what that question could mean. I think just having that, and that's a really good point too about different languages. You know, if it's little simple things like what Zoltan's done here, because he's done this ambassadors and above with the tech tokens, just the little thing of who triggers it and what doesn't trigger it. Just little simple additions.
Yeah.
I
It
think go a long way.
the opportunity for various types of reference cards or sheets or booklets or what have you is certainly very high, and the kind of thing that I think you could quite easily include in a deluxe edition on a game found, even if they were add-ons that people are like, all right, I don't necessarily, not everybody wants this, but somebody's like, I'm willing to spend $10 to get the set of all of the quick reference things. I know a lot of people have done, and I'm one of them, but have done these various types of Kurama references that show you what can it be used and whose does it affect and how does it work with this faction versus that faction, and it can be a lot. But some people are like, I need that extra so I don't have to try to flip through the rule book or Google it. And then you got on the other side, you got like, all right, got all these icons. It's great. Now I need a reference guide that explains what do these icons mean. So you're like, oh, what is that?
Yeah.
What is this missile thing shooting at a guy over there? Oh, that's a highliner. All right, so that must mean shipping. So yeah, there's not going to ever be a solution unless we're getting a chip installed into our heads that has a heads-up display in our eyes. And so
Or just play more.
yeah, exactly. And you get a reference like this. So this is a great example. This would be too much for me. This would be like overload. Like I would need a separate set of references to understand what this reference is helping me to understand. And I know the game really well. And at first glance, I'm just like, what am I looking at? But for some people, they're like, no, this is exactly what I want. So
Yeah.
I've got my at
This has
start thing
actually
is broken down
replaced
by
the
phase. Yeah,
yeah, this has actually replaced my faction sheets. I love
interesting.
these references. I can't remember who put the post up, but I'm pretty sure I linked the original post from BGG. Yeah, that's where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've printed all of the factions out
And this
with
is
this,
this
and
is analogous to the pad of paper that the Avalon Hill edition had, where you've got all
yeah,
right a list of all of the treachery cards and then some explanations on what some of them do. And so yeah, this is the sort of reference sheet that maybe some people they want. They're like, yeah, let's add that on. Let's maybe like a set of 6 of these or 8 of these or whatever that you can say in the box. If you want the treachery card reference sheet, go grab it. There it is. It's not a terrible idea. It's the sort of thing, if you need it, there it is, and if you don't need it, you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't have to clutter
and
up your space. If you're like, I know all these cards, I know what they do, but somebody new, yeah, they're just not going to be like, all right, what's the point of that? So I
another
think,
thing I
yeah,
have
go ahead.
with that is for some of the factions like Moritani or Richesse, the back side, the treachery card side, actually has an extra column with their faction specific um, abilities or interactions with cards. So, like the Chome one has all of the effects of Chome, and the Moritani one has all of the terror tokens. And I've actually printed out extras for everyone, and I just hand them out. If Moritani in the game, here you go. Here's all what the here's what all the terror tokens do. Oh, Ekaz is in the game. Here's what all of um the ambassadors do, and it's the mentality of playing fair and giving everyone the opportunity to go, oh, okay, I can just look up on this reference because there's so much to remember in this game. So
Yeah, I
just
wouldn't
having
mind
that little
having,
reference.
little reference pamphlets, and then they're stored inside a Bene Gesserit pain box, and that
Oh,
goes into
actually,
the big
you know
box.
what? that reminds me of Eclipse Second Dawn, because you hand out the whole tray, and when you open it up, there is actually a little pamphlet in there. That's actually something they've done, and we reference that all the time when we play Eclipse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's and then now you're like, okay, I
Oh,
feel I
there you
feel
go.
extra happy to have this now because
Yeah,
it's
and
really
you can
cool.
just look at it quickly and go, "Oh, that's right, that's what it is." And this is the things I was talking about with the
Exactly.
extra,
All of the
yeah,
extra,
references.
all
So
the stuff.
yeah,
It's good to have. I mean, you can be like, dude, give me your reference, give me your faction sheet, let me read it.
yeah.
Although this
What's
stuff
the
is not
smooth drug do?
listed anywhere, so it's great to have to be like, all right, I want to know what they can sell. And for my
Yeah,
part, I would love to take a page from Banana Smasher's suggestion. If we were to re-implement Rich S, I would actually include 5 additional cards just to give them a little more variety, so they can say, "Ooh, you know what? Based on the faction mix that we have in here, these 2 cards here that are not normally part of the 10 that they have, I think are going to sell a lot better. They're more situational." And so,
it's a
yeah,
cool
having that
idea.
reference, it might be a good reference for even Rich S to be like, okay, I'm thinking ahead. What do I want to sell? So yeah, I think stuff like this and a game found is the perfect time to say, yeah, we can whip these up and go. There you go. Everyone can get one of these. It's part of the God Emperor pledge level of you're getting the huge box and everything in it. And so yeah, and you and I talked offline about the idea that the shields themselves could have a little more pertinent information. If we put the Karama power on the actual faction sheets, it doesn't need to go here, but you could have maybe a more comprehensive strategy tips. So you could have maybe like early game strategy tips about certain phases, like where you're weak in this phase, or you should be going after spice blows. You don't have an income. There's any number of things, and on the opposite side, you have your leader strength, so that other players can tell at a glance, which leaders do you have, who's their strongest, who your
Yeah,
weakest, what's your mix and average, and any other public information that you normally would have to go look up. It might be good to have on there. So make those shields, really multi-purpose on there. And so yeah, there's plenty of other stuff. There's the old shield
even
style, which had
yeah.
that might be fun to revisit. Again, if it's a
I think they're
deluxe,
really good
this is this
because
was for the price. This was this perfectly adequate design. The Gale Force 9 one, but this one was a little more fun, and they had
a lot dirtier too.
yeah. So it's interesting, and again, and they could probably do something even cooler than this for a deluxe version. So it's just a matter of what's going to be the deluxe version and what would be a new edition version of it. Would they just go back to this and it maybe has better information? Would they go with a new design that is more encompassing? It's worth a discussion, and whether or not you're incorporating something like this holder. This elevates the current shield design quite a bit by making it sturdy, easier to stand up, and then providing you with some ways to organize your goodies. I'm always in favor of that. It's easy to knock stuff off the table, and you're like, oh, where's my spice? What's my deal with this? So yeah,
Some
there's
people
plenty.
just like organizing it too,
Yeah,
and um, that design from Tabletop Goodies, I think, is on Etsy.
yeah,
It's just I've got some of them, and they're great to just here
yeah.
goes my this is where my leaders go, this is where my spice goes. Yeah, so that's my page, but as you can see, I have them. I don't sell them directly, but you can get them off of
Yeah.
Tabletop Goodies. So just wanted to clarify that.
So as we move over down into the battle wheel, there's been a lot of talk about how to make this experience better. And the reason that experience needs to be better is that you really have a lot going on here. You've got the wheel, you're dialing the wheel, you're sticking your leader in, and that's all important. But then you have the idea of you're also holding 1, 2, maybe even 3 treachery cards as part of your battle plan. And technically, it's secret whether you're including any cards in there. It's not super explicit in the rules, but that is the rule. And so if somebody's looking across the table, I mean, you're trying to do this behind your shield, which is not huge. to mask whether or not you're playing cards. And then you may have some other stuff like, oh, I've got the Kwisatz Haderach token, so I got to include that. And if I'm spice styling, I have to have my spice. It is supposed to all be there. And trying to hold all this in one hand. And so we've looked at a few different Etsy solutions, and each one has something that is good that I like. For me personally, there isn't anything that I think is that looks great, is elegant, is fully functional. This is pretty close because it is gives you this nice lip, lets you hold everything. You were even showing it on your site. It's holding spice tokens and not even just the spice. So this has a little more of a 3D element to it, but nevertheless,
Yeah,
having a way
the
to keep all of this handy so that you're not having to need three hands in order to present everything.
yeah, yeah, the original file that I found online didn't have the lip. That's what I added because yeah, it's holding all of that is impossible. Like you said, you need three hands to do it,
Yeah,
and trying to do it secretly is
exactly. This is something I would love to sit down with some smart people, either at Gale Force 9 or who they've brought in, and go, all right, let's get something. Let's figure out the deluxe version of this that is just going to blow people away and with its functionality and with what it does. And then if there is a new version of Dune, like is there a cost effective solution or is it just as simple as, hey, we can do this. And maybe again, it's an add-on that people can get on the Game Found to say like, all right, yeah, this works. It does everything we need it to do. So yeah, that's something we may have to tap into your brain for that as well, Ben. Yeah, and we've seen people using cards
yeah,
instead of holding the tokens. Um, a lot of people have suggested doing a digital battle wheel, but again, it crosses that line of the Great Convention.
yeah.
Are we using technology to do our thinking for us? My God, don't let it happen. So, yeah, it's
It's
a fun
against the
idea.
Butler and Jihad.
Yes. So
We fought a war over this. Yeah,
So yeah, and so here we are. We're still in the deluxe token side of things. So we've got your stackable tokens, and you've also got inserts for the planets. And this is all really high quality. It's really cool. And I know you were talking earlier too about being able to bring in additional colors into it, and you were even talking about having the symbol of the Force being itself 3D printed and part of the stackable nature. That's fun. I know that like my friend Jay, he likes having individual 3D people that he places, and he shows that off a lot. He's brought it to Gen Con. For me, it's just like I can't fit that many people in the territories where I often find myself. So stacking these forces is got to be the way to go. But this is great. I used to have inserts that they didn't stack, and it was an improvement. It was a better tactile experience, but they were getting knocked over. But these work great, and so you sent me these, and I love them. I think they're great. I can't recommend them enough, and I'm going to insist that Gale Force 9 use something like this, whether they want to have a 3D guy that stands on top, as like almost like a faction marker for your forces, and then everybody else is just horizontal, whatever they want to do. But as long as you can stack those forces, because when you get into Wind Pass North and there's a spice blow there, that's getting to be absurd. You could have all 6 factions in that same territory. Not that I've ever seen it, but I've seen 3 factions there, and there's not even room for one. So it's just kind of
yeah,
absurd. And this is what I was talking about. I was like, I don't know that this is going to work because if you've got Atreides in there and you've got Harkonnen in there and then you've got advisors and then you've got ECAS is using Occupy in there as well. And then maybe you've got an ambassador token and a terror token in there, maybe a no field for whatever reason. I don't know. It's
and
too
an
much.
ambassador,
Yeah,
and,
it's
and
just
like
too much.
even having to maybe this is my bias, but even having to have 2 sets of the Bene Gesserit, one which is the advisor and one which is the fighter, and having to swap them out all the time
Yeah.
when you flip instead of just flipping the token over, to me it just gets annoying. I'd
It's
rather
too
just
much. It's too much, I tell
yeah.
you. So yeah,
It
so
looks really cool, but especially when you've got something like what is it, Wind Pass North, a
yeah,
really small
that's the
ice
worst.
sector. Yeah,
And
what are
and
you gonna
then
do?
maybe we revisit the map itself and kind of adjust the territories. We go, all right, where are the territories where forces are going to be? So, like even
That
on
needs to
this
happen.
picture right here, if you know that rock outcropping has a spice flow on it, but the space inside the sector where the territory is really small. And you've got all this extra space where nobody's ever going to be over here. So maybe you say, let's move this border on a little bit more and really make use of knowing where the forest is. There it is, Wind Past North. It's got a spice blow, but it's such a small territory, so it's not optimal. So maybe we think about revisiting the map just to make a few
Even
adjustments. And
even though it's based on what's in the book, like
yeah,
War for Arrakis is different from what that board looks like, and certain territories are exaggerated or reimagined. I think there's not a lot of things where I'd say it definitely needs to be looked at, but this is one of those things where
yeah.
it's a no-brainer in my opinion.
They
And even
almost certainly will think about a playmat. They actually already have a playmat, and it's a little bit bigger than the map, and it has a space for a treachery deck and a discard and a single spice blow and spice blow discard. Something like this is a little bit more appropriate, especially for advance. You've got your two spice blows. You actually have a track for where your bidding cards will go. And then, spaces for decks for other things that could be in the game. Although even this is not perfect because it doesn't
yeah,
have some discards. The Nexus deck has a discard. Some of these other decks don't. You don't need to have a discard for traders. But yeah, I mean, I do love the idea of a playmat. They did a really beautiful giant playmat for the Adventures of Conan, as well as a smaller one that's just the player board. But the giant one has space for everything that's going to be on the table. So it's nice to think about it in those terms. This is not everything that's on the table, but it's a lot of the cards, the tokens, your Spice Bank, your Tleilaxu tanks, all of your trackers and whatnot. So it is good to have a nice, neat designated areas for stuff. But it's the sort of thing that, we as designers and some of the play testers will want to take a close look at what the publisher wants to manufacture so that we're accounting for, true gameplay that could involve any number of the modules or what have you in there. And this map also has, designated spots for your discovery tokens. So that's a fun idea as well. I might gray these out a little bit just so that they're like, this is where it might be, not where it is. But
yeah,
yeah, but I like the way he's thinking, and having a clear border of where the Fremen can ship is something that should have been included much earlier. And so I would
I think
anticipate we'll get that in this Kwisatz Haderach edition.
I think as well the Imperial Basin and Shield Wall iconography. If you scroll up a little bit, the Iliad himself actually
Yeah.
put it on his one there. So that's
Yeah,
another small
it's a
addition.
distinct. It's another one of those nuances of the game that most people.
Yeah,
But here, if you're like, why is this gray? And you can say, here's the answer to that. As long as the shield wall is intact, these areas are safe from the storm. But once you blow it up, and by the way, there's a way to blow it up, then
yeah.
these are just like desert territories where you could die if the storm goes through. So,
Something a new player will ask, and that's what you want. You don't want them to be,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
blindsided by, oh, oops, nuclear explosion, like you said.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so we've got some miscellaneous goodies, small cosmetic changes. I think that's got to be on the table as well, because some of them are also errors, like Wana Yui doesn't have her faction marker, and Esmar and Staben are not who they say they are, and stuff like that. Some of the color things, so like Ikaz and the Tleilaxu, a little too close, and the Emperor and the Guild a little too close. You've got Riches and the Ixians for some people, a little too close. Maybe some other ways to make those tokens and colors more distinctive. I think using the Chom example where it is two colors, so that could be something that makes these stand out better. It makes it easier for people with colorblind issues, and I've mentioned it before, but it seems like everyone I play games with has some kind of color blindness. So want to do that. Now they did mention in their video that they were looking at the Spice Harvest and potentially the duel, finally making it into the Gale Force 9. They will be changed. They will not be the same, but they'll be better. So changed for the good. That's really all I can say there and all I can. This was something that came in the duel. It's not really something that's been on our radar, but could make for a fun add-on or something like a stretch goal. I hope that's something that Gale Force 9 will be entertaining, the notion of bringing in the shield leaders and a mechanism for how they would work in the game. I know that there's people that like that and people that want it. I still have
I'm one of
mine
those.
originals, so
Yeah,
and there
I'm
there
one
are a
of
lot
those
of
who
other
wants the leaders.
yeah, there's a lot of other interesting homebrew ideas out there that again some of them could be worth considering as add-ons or stretch goals or some other thing. It's the sort of thing we'd want to take a closer look as the designers so that we can give it our endorsement. But a lot of them I think are pretty good, and most of them are pretty much ready to go. It would be good to get feedback from people who have been using the homebrew versions, and if they have any feedback. But yeah, if we knew that we were going to be potentially adding in objectives or some of these other nifty ideas, I'd want to include them. But I would only want to include stuff that we felt like, yeah, this is good. We don't feel like we need to take credit for it, but we want to make sure that if it aligns with our values and our objectives for what the game is, and reaching into more areas of the Dune lore and bringing that to life. I think a lot of people like all of that extra stuff. They like this idea of smuggler faction and some representation of the Idawali and whatnot. We do have the self-imposed limit of sticking to Dune or stuff that happened not long before it, but not much longer after it. Idawali, that's two books later, although technically they were always there.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's the sort of thing that, again, if Gale Force 9 says, hey, we've got the opportunity to, as a stretch goal or as some other incentive, to consider either some additional factions or some elements to the game that point to these other thematic elements, we're open to finding a way to realize those. So I'm
and I
in
really
favor.
like playing the game for the thematics and feeling like there are other factions that aren't in the game who are moving behind the scenes. When you get a Nexus card and it's for a faction that's not in the game, I
Yeah,
think that's really cool.
yeah,
So having that in the game is something I really like because of the thematics. And
yeah. It makes
yeah,
it
the
feel
whole
like
scenario, in
the
my
the
opinion.
universe is much larger, and that there are more eyes on Arrakis than just the players who are currently playing, and so which would be very much on brand for what would be going on. So yeah, I do like that.
Yeah,
Um,
like more Nexus cards for people who aren't in the game or something is
exactly.
what I
Yeah.
put there. I think it's cool. Just pick up someone who's not in the game
Yeah, the
and
additional
more tech
tech
tokens
tokens.
and
Some
stuff.
stuff about that needs to be play tested, but again, I'm open to the idea. I thought about these ahead of time, I probably would have included them. So I like these, and I've got additional ideas about like these two in particular, which are my two favorite out of all of the other crazy ones that have come up. Adding more creates new issues that have to be dealt with. But it's the sort of thing that I would want to have a discussion if I knew that, like, all right, yes, we can do this, even if it's not going to be a part of the in the box thing, but it's an add-on that we can make an official add-on. I would still want to sit down with the playtesters and other members of the community and go, all right, let's get some consensus on certain things. Do we really want one for every faction, or do we want just a couple of new ones, or do we want to change any of the old ones? I know that there's opinions about things. Some other stuff like, if we're going to do a two-player version of it, we want to have a stronghold blocker so that you're not trying to 5 strongholds. I think 4 works fine. You're still going to be fighting from turn 1 to stop somebody from winning. If you want to have proper two-player rules, but is there anything else that should be done for that? I love the idea of like we're marking my faction with a cool 3D symbol of what it is. This might be a little too big, but yeah, something goes on the board.
Yeah,
And but let me ask you, Ben. I mean, what other stuff do you feel very strongly about when we're talking about all right, what's going to be in this Kwisatz Haderach edition of the game? I mean, if you had to be like, all right, that we're only going to be able to do this and maybe that, what floats to the tippity top for you?
Uh, for me, it'd be either uh, like just visual 3D markers and stuff. So I really like the what was up on the post there, the 3D storm, or just fun things that make it more thematic and easier to remember all the little rules because I always forget where the storm is. Or the stackable tokens is something I developed because I was sick of them falling over and having to put them in. There was like a little folder for the ones that didn't stack. I was just, oh, imagine if they stacked. Oh, well, I could just make them that they stack. Little things like that, and just making the game more thematic and more streamlined. Those are the main things I want in the Kwisatz Haderach edition. If it's a new rule set or it's revisions and clarifications, for me, that's the main things. And also making it able for the community to go, celebrate the fact that it is very homebrewed and has a very long history, and just go, hey, here you go. Maybe here's some blank cards, and you can write on what you want to add to the thing yourself, or here's a module and it lets you do what you want with this or add this or whatever you want to do. And also, now that you're going past it, storage solutions as well, because the original box doesn't fit all the things in it anymore. I've got a
No.
bigger box that has my whole collection of extra tokens and
Do you
bigger
really?
tokens
I mean,
and
I
stuff.
think
Yeah,
everybody is really keen to see a storage solution that not only fits everything but makes it easy to set everything up and easy to clean everything up, because it is a game that can have quite a long lead time of let's get all this stuff out there and whatnot, and so it'd be nice to have a spice bank that you just pull the thing out and there's your spice bank, and it's got all the spices already in its compartments and it's ready to go, and something for each faction. Like all your faction stuff goes in here, so at the end of the game, you know where to put it. It's pretty clear where everything goes. It makes cleaning up a snap, and then it just goes into its designated slot in the box. That's one of the things I'm most hoping for. With it right now, I'm using a couple of different boxes, and only certain things go in this box and that. And people are like, "Let me help you clean up," and I'm always like, "Just leave it. I'm the only one
yeah,
who knows
just
how
let
this
me do
works,
it.
so
Yeah,
just leave
I
it
do
where it
that as
is.
well.
Go home, and I'll clean it up later." And so, yeah,
I
it would be nice.
Another thing I would really like is I put it in the post the Shai Halud to eat the troops, and I'd really like those 3D faction symbols like you said, and you scroll past it again, like if the Tleilaxu aren't in the game, having some automated version of the Tleilaxu, yeah, just down a bit, yeah, there, which is from the original Avalon. It was an automated thing. I'm sure you know more about it than me, but just reading about it, like the thematics of it, just being like, oh, that's cool. I can interact with the Tleilaxu even if they aren't in the game. Um, Things like that, I just think make the game feel more alive and feel like I'm in the world um, of Dune, which is one of the reasons I really like the game because it is very, very thematic.
Yeah, same here. One of my favorite games and one of my favorite thematic games. So it scores very high. Yeah, and just to say nothing of the giant 3D. I'm hoping that we
Yeah,
can have another chit chat about that with the designer of that. So look forward to that in a future battle language. I think that Ben is going to try to help me get together with that designer, Laurent, I think is his name, and then Zoltan, who's done a lot of these other Etsy things, and kind of get some feedback from them and talk about what motivates them. But this is a pretty good one, and again, we've got some time. I think it will be fun to revisit this, and let us know in the comments what areas you feel strongly about and what areas you would like us to go into more depth on and talk about the pros and cons, or talk about what something means. Let us know. We still don't know precisely what will be in the edition. And it could be that Gale Force 9 is still trying to decide. So I think any feedback that we can give them going in is self-serving. It's going to help us all out and get what we hope to be the best edition of Dune that will just fire us up and get to the table as often as it deserves to be. So Ben, thanks for joining me from around the world
So,
to talk about this. And
yeah,
yeah, we're going to try
upside
to,
down.
yes, exactly. Counterclockwise or anti-clockwise, as you guys like to say. And yeah,
Uh,
let's try to get together those Etsy, the big powerhouse Dune people of Etsy for a nice chat about what sorts of stuff might inspire the deluxe edition of the Kwisatz thing, and what might they do if some stuff doesn't get in there, or how they might improve on things. I think that they're not necessarily going to be driven out of business with this edition, but it might cause them to pivot a little, and they may also be instrumental in helping to develop what is the best possible version. There may be things that are like, you know what, if I were producing this on a mass scale, I could probably do this and that, so maybe Gale Force 9 can do that. So I think there's lessons to be learned, and I would like to start learning them. But yes, for Ben and for myself, thanks everyone for watching and listening. That's going to be it for this one. Thanks. We'll see you again soon.